So in case you were not here, here is the lecture for the Civil War in China. So a lot of it is review from our imperialism unit. So I did briefly go over the Opium Wars, which is when Europe is really going to break into China, imperialist China. And they were trading a lot of opium. China threatened to go to war if they didn't stop. The Europeans were like, okay. And then they realized China wasn't as strong as they thought they were. And so the European powers are able to easily defeat the Chinese military. And this is going to lead to a lot of unequal treaties in China. It's really turning the tide in China. Again, civil war is not going to be for over 100 years, but this is all leading up to it. And then in 1850, there's going to be this rebellion called the Taiping Rebellion. Hong Xiuquan is going to establish the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom and rebel against the Qing dynasty. He's going to claim to be brother of Jesus, and that is how he really gets his following. So he's going to create a religious society in China. It's based in Tianjin, which is also known as Nanking. And it's just going to get this huge following, and there's going to be this big clash between the Heavenly Kingdom and the Qing Empire. But the Qing dynasty is able to win one of the bloodiest wars in history. From most European scholars, they'll say 20 to 30 million deaths. I've seen some Chinese scholars put that number as high as 100 million. So potentially the deadliest war in history, but one of the deadliest wars, right? But again, we did already cover that in first semester. And then the third rebellion I really wanted to talk about is going to be the Boxer Rebellion. In 1900, a lot of Chinese citizens didn't like all the Western intervention they had, basically could do whatever they wanted in China. They felt like that was wrong. So they're going to use this martial arts technique that sort of looks like shadow boxing. And they believe this would allow them to win any battle because they would become impervious to bullets. They would just bounce off them, right? But spoiler, it did not. And then they would think, well, we must have been doing the technique wrong. And so they kept going to these battles. And the Qing rulers are actually supporting this rebellion as an attempt to get the Western powers out. But as you would guess, it is unsuccessful and fails. And the Western nations are going to kick out Empress Shiji, who you can see right here. She's the last real empress that had actual power in China. As you can see, they are going to put Emperor Puyi in power, so he's technically the ruler, but it is more just like a puppet position. You can watch the movie The Last Emperor. It's very good. Kind of goes more into detail about his role. But that is going to lead to the nationalists taking over and overthrowing this kind of puppet Qing dynasty government. So Sun Yat-sen, as you can see, and the nationalists are able to overthrow the Qing emperor and establish a new republic. Sun Yat-sen hopes to establish 3 principles for the new nation: nationalism, so an end to all that Western control, people's rights, so he wanted to bring democracy to China, and people's livelihood. He wanted to bring economic security for all Chinese people. So they're officially moving out of that monarchical system and more into a democratic system, right? And the reason I brought up all these wars is just to show this pattern, this history of rebellion, of wars in China. If you remember the Mandate of Heaven from last semester, it talked a lot about the gods are behind you, essentially, if you are able to win your war and overthrow the government. You have the support of the gods because they got you to win, essentially. So there's going to be this tradition of rebellions, which is going to set up another civil war that's going to happen, right? Because this new group is going to think they'll have kind of the mandate of heaven to overthrow the nationalists. Well, they are going to enter this warlord period that we don't talk too much about, more regional leadership, but it is eventually going to lead to the Chinese Civil War, as we talked about in a previous class. So the war is going to last from 1927 to 1949. Again, you have to remember there was a big pause right in the middle for World War II, where they kind of put aside their differences. The war is going to be between the KMT, who are the nationalists. I have a hard time pronouncing the actual Kwangdong, something like that. Government, who are the nationalists, Sun Yat-sen, going to be Chiang Kai-shek. And then the CPC, who are the communists with Mao Zedong, as we talked about. So many citizens felt that there was instability and corruption in the KMT government. They also felt like there was a lot of social and economic inequality that's kind of going to lead to this communist movement. Those two things, the corruption and the inequality, right? And so citizens are also going to be upset with the failure of the KMT to modernize China and deal with foreign aggression. This is a lot pointing to Japan being able to somewhat easily invade China leading up to the and up to World War II, right? So there's all of these problems happening, and initially the nationalists have a huge advantage, and they are easily winning the war. But World War II is gonna come along. So there's gonna be the Shanghai Massacre, which is kind of towards the beginning of the war. It's kind of one of the first actual battles. I wouldn't know if you'd call it a battle, but skirmishes. In 1927, the KMT turned on the CPC, and they're going to kill thousands of communists. And then, as I was saying, many of the battles in this civil war is going to go towards the nationalists, right? You can see we're getting closer to World War II. So the nationalists really have the communists on the run. They have a lot more people, a lot more support at that time. And the communists have to go on this long march, they call it, where they're basically fleeing to northern China. But along the way, as they're getting further away from the cities, they're gaining more support of the peasants. So this is kind of going to be where the communists are going to gain a lot of momentum. But then, as I said, in 1937, Japan is going to invade China, and the KMT and CPC are going to join together. So they're going to stop their civil war and fight against Japan. So again, Japan invades them, and the nationalists are still running the country. So a lot of people are going to blame the KMT, the nationalists, for allowing Japan to invade, essentially. So during this time, during all of World War II, CPC is going to gain a lot of the people's support. And so when fighting resumes following World War II, the CPC is going to have more people, they're going to have better tactics, and they are going to win the Civil War in 1945. And the KMT is going to escape to this little island, this blue island here, Taiwan, sometimes called Chinese Taipei, sometimes called the People's Republic of China. This is going to be where they escape to. There's a lot of problems with that today. Sorry, students are at the door trying to get in, but I'm going to finish. So why are they able to be successful and win? Well, they use a lot of effective military tactics, such as guerrilla warfare. They are able to fight more successfully against better equipped KMT forces. Again, the big part, the CPC is going to gain the support of the peasants. They're going to go on that land distribution thing where they're saying, we're going to take land from the landlords and redistribute it to the peasants, and you guys are going to be able to work on your own land and do your own thing without having to pay these exorbitant rents. That doesn't really happen, but that is the promise that gets people behind it. Chinese people were, again, disillusioned with KMT's corrupt and ineffective government. So again, that's going to bring more support to the CPC. CPC had support of the Soviet Union, and they're going to get more support than the KMT gets from the United States. Again, this is part of the Cold War, so the Soviet Union is going to support the communist side, and the US is going to support more of the capitalist side. But in this one, the Soviet Union is going to provide more help than the United States does. So the KMT also gets weakened by a lot of that corruption, internal divisions. And then they are going to face, again, that criticism for how they dealt with the foreign aggression with Japan's invasion in 1930. So all of this is kind of going to shift the tide towards Mao and the communists. So a lot happened. We've talked about the Great Leap Forward in class already, but then it is getting later in Mao's life, and he is going to start this thing called the Cultural Revolution. It's going to begin in 1966 with the aim to cleanse China of the bourgeoisie. So kind of getting rid of like elite culture in China. They felt like it was still there, people that thought they were better than the communist government, right? And the Red Guard is going to be formed by students and mostly young people to enforce these principles of the Cultural Revolution and basically attack anyone who opposes Mao or his ideology. So what they want to do with this Cultural Revolution is destroy the four olds of China: old ideas, old culture, old custom, old habits, old history. That's why, as we saw, they go against a lot of teachers and professors. They basically just wanted to move forward with Mao's ideology and forget about all of their rich Chinese culture and history. So millions of people are going to be persecuted and tortured during this time and killed during the Cultural Revolution, right? A lot of people, you're not just going to say, oh, let's forget everything of the past and just move forward. A lot of people are going to be very resistant to that. So the economy and education system is going to suffer. As I said, many intellectuals and professionals are going to be sent to labor camps and executed for the wrong teaching about these things. So this is going to be, it gets everyone behind Mao, but it's humanitarian disaster, right? And then lastly, under communism, one of the other things I want to talk about is China is going to begin to expand, most notably into Tibet. Mao's government, as they expand into Tibet, is going to kill over 1 million people, seizing their land, and many of those peasants are going to be forced to work on collective farms for the country. And this isn't just in Tibet, this is all over China. Again, they took all that land from people, saying they're going to redistribute it, but instead they just make those collectives, forcing people to work on land, forcing people to produce that steel, thinking about that Great Leap Forward, right? So all of these things are kind of culminating to lead to a lot of civil unrest in the country. And there's an aging Mao as their leader, which is going to lead into our next class. So again, I just want you thinking of that civil unrest that is happening in the country. All right, and then you have the exit ticket, and have a good day.